At the end of the 2022 harvest, we caught up with 4 Napa Valley winemakers to get their immediate impressions on the 2022 vintage. Now, we'll revisit all 4 of them to see how the wines are tasting as they age in barrel. We're gonna head over and talk to Andy Erickson of Favia, Marla Carroll of Antinori Napa Valley, Laura Barrett of Cliff Family Winery, and Robert Smith of Quixote Winery.
Well, it's crazy to say, but arrived here in 1994. Very blessed with a lot of the properties I've worked with. Annie and I started Favia back in 2003, so 2022 is our 20th vintage.
Tell me a little bit about this vintage last year, the 2022 vintage. What was that growing season like, and then how did that affect harvest?
I would say 2022 ended with an exclamation point, which was this amazing heat wave we had. So we make wines in Oakville and Coombsville. So it's funny, it was almost like 2 different harvests, right? So in Oakville, we were harvesting, right before the heat and right sort of in the middle of it. And we didn't pick the Coombsville grapes for another 30 days after Oakville. So it was crazy. I mean, they really just came in later in October with just perfect chemistry and super exciting, yeah.
And how are they showing right now in comparison to the previous vintages?
Hey, you want to start tasting?
I do, I kind of do. How did you know I was leading you there? I do.
Well, let's find out. And so this is Cabernet Sauvignon from Coombsville. It's clone 337. We actually make 3 different clones from this vineyard, but I would say it's a pretty normal vintage in a way. The wine's very balanced. It's very aromatic. It's not overripe in any way. Wow, I'm glad we picked this barrel.
Me too.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this
Really
would have
nice.
just been fermented malolactic in barrel right in here and only racked once. So this has only been racked once. There's nothing that's been done to the wine. So pretty good reflection of the vineyard.
Yeah. Something that I've heard from other vineyard sites is that the wines, the 2022s, are going to be a little bit more approachable, younger. Do you find that with this site as well, or is this very typical?
I think in Coombsville, we have a more sort of typical tannin profile. Up Valley, a lot of tannin got degraded with the heat, so the wines are very soft and very plush now. So yeah, we probably bottled them a little bit earlier. They'll be a little bit more appealing when they're young. Every year has its own story, and you don't know what the story is until you get through it.
It's a little time capsule.
Yeah, you need to celebrate the year no matter what.
Very well said. Thank you for sharing this beautiful wine to
cheers.
2022. Marla, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to taste through these wines and talk about the 2022 vintage a little bit. Can you give us a bit of background first, though, on Antinori?
So, the Antinori family, they go back 27 generations, so it's an honor working for a family with that kind of history, that kind of legacy.
Let's talk about the 2022 vintage. What was that growing season like, and then how did harvest go?
It was a surprising vintage. I think they all are in one way or another, but just in general, the whites have great brightness, freshness, acidity. I love our Chardonnay. It is my favorite that I've worked on since I started here. We're at a point where we're increasing our acreage of Cabernet Franc. And so we have young blocks that are just now coming into production. And so we had 2 new blocks come on last year of Cabernet Franc. And I didn't have super high expectations because they were so young, but the quality was so high. I think it was able to withstand the heat in a way. So I guess there was a lot of things that surprised me about the vintage.
But surprising in good ways, it seems, because something like that, people could look at it from a certain point of view and be like, oh, this has changed all of my plans, but that can be a really good thing, and it can bring surprises like the Cabernet Franc. So with this surprise in the 2022, right before harvest like that, how did that change your winemaking approach? What did you have to do to kind of like pivot?
It changed which blocks we were pulling fruit from. So we're fortunate in that all of our fruit is off of our estate. Luckily, I'm able to shift things around in terms of which blocks we get fruit off of. So, and then also on the winemaking side, just leaving things on skins longer, giving it more time to macerate in the tank. We had kind of the luxury of just tasting and waiting until things were ready to come off skins, which was quite a bit longer than in a typical year. You do have to adjust your winemaking to the vintage in 22. Is smooth, supple, soft, really fruit forward, really expressive. The tannins are already finely knit and pretty evolved. Yeah, so it's going to be a fun vintage to drink right away, which I think most people do anyway. So,
Well, on that note, if you should drink it right away, I think we should drink these barrel samples right away.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So
I will
this
take your
is
advice.
a blend of 4 different Cabernet Franc blocks off of our property.
Oh, cool.
2 of them, it was the first year we got fruit off of those particular blocks. So,
I love Cabernet Franc. So exciting. That color too, with that purple hue on there.
yeah. I mean, I think we were pretty blown away by the color because some of the Cab Francs were darker in color than the Cab Sauv, which is not typical.
So aromatic, the beautiful like violet notes and all that juicy fruit. But still a little of that
The cassis and the graphite and the peppercorn. We like to go through malolactic in old barrels, and then once things are through malolactic, then we rack to new oak. So this went to new oak in like March. So I think the barrel's still a little bit sitting on top of the wine, but with time.
With time.
It'll integrate. This is our Cabernet Sauvignon, which we call Townsend. So this is a blend of many different blocks on the property. It's really fun to taste the wines as they evolve. They're filling in their mid-palate, their structure.
Yeah, it does have that nice kind of soft, but there's something really, really elegant about it.
They're not typically super fruit forward. They're typically a little bit more floral, dried herb, graphite,
I like them.
power. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your barrel samples with us, and also for just talking about what's, I think, going to be a very exceptional vintage.
Definitely.
I will wait till 2025 to drink more of it.
Cheers. Cliff Family Winery was started in 2004 by Kit Crawford and Gary Erickson, and they are the original owners and founders of Cliff Bar and Company. And then in 2011, they built and opened this tasting room. I started in November of 2014, so this is my 9th vintage.
How cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Let's talk about the 2022 vintage. What was that growing season and then the harvest like?
Well, for the lots that were riper earlier, I think those wines have incredible concentration, and they have a tannin development that I really haven't seen before. For example, I have a Cabernet here from our Croquet vineyard. For this particular block, because I had a warmer period right at the end of the ripening period, I feel like I got that tannin resolution without sacrificing a lot of extra time on the vine that put me out of my comfort zone. This is the Croquet vineyard, and this is at about 1,700-foot elevation on the north side of Howell Mountain, so it's warmer. It has a lot of exposure to the Pope Valley weather patterns.
This is such a wonderfully like powerful nose, just like jumps right out of the glass.
This is always so fruit forward, and I think in this vintage in particular, where I really see the benefits and where this is going to rise above all the other vintages is in the tannin development.
I'm gonna get in here.
This is a wine that in cooler years would have just a lot more grippy tannin, but I think that because we had a warmer season and a warmer sort of end of the ripening pattern, it's really lush.
So how does this compare to the other barrel sample that you brought?
The other barrel sample I have is from the Valley Floor. So this is our Oak Knoll District vineyard called Valle de Soto. And this is one of those lots that in 2022, it benefited from that last month of harvest of hang time. So I really didn't pick this until the very, very end of October.
Wow.
So this is also a blend. This is our Bordeaux style blend. So it is primarily Cabernet, but also has Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot. So here I feel like the tannin is a lot more present on the mid palate. But again, there's a level of concentration that I think is really specific to 2022 vintage.
With the 2022 vintage, how did you approach making a single varietal wine versus a blend?
So I think the blended wines are beautiful in 2022 because we had all these really interesting pieces to pull from. We had what I consider 3 parts to the harvesting process in 2022, kind of the earlier picks, and then the picks that were right after the heat of Labor Day, and then the ones that lasted through all the way to the end of October. So that allowed a lot of really great balance for putting blends together.
So these wines are currently in barrel. How long do we have to wait before we're able to buy them?
So we will bottle them in the summer of 2024. And then they're typically a year or a year and a half bottle age before they're released. So they will come to market in the fall of 2025. So we still have to sit tight.
To wait. But it'll be worth the wait.
It will be so worth the wait.
Quixote was the brainchild of a man named Carl Dumani, who founded Stag's Leap Winery directly next door. The idea here was that he wanted to center the winery around Petite Syrah, which was one of his favorite varietals, and it was a varietal that he thought didn't get enough recognition in the world, and he thought he could change that.
That's really cool. That's a bold move in Napa, where it's kind of known as the land of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Absolutely, it's a Quixotean task. So,
So let's talk about 2022. How did that go for you?
for me, 22 is more of a softer vintage. Tannins are lovely, but it's not like a massively structured vintage. I mean, the tannins are very elegant and soft. I think they're just really beautiful at this point.
Can we maybe start tasting some of these?
Standard.
If you don't mind. What do you think we should start with?
I think Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay, I think so too. Let's do it. Thank you. Wow, look at that color. Oh, that's juicy.
Yeah, loads of cherries. I think that's really indicative of the Stag's Leap district. But you see, there's nice density there, but the tannins are very soft, approachable, super smooth, mouth coating.
It's crazy obviously these still have some time to integrate and to go, but it's crazy tasting these 2022 wines already and just seeing how present they already are.
Yeah.
Like they're ready. They want to go.
One of the things I love about this property is the topography that's around us. So we've got the Palisades directly to the east of us, and then we've got this nice hill over here to the west. And in the afternoons, that really helps kind of the area function as a bit of a wind tunnel. So we get these nice breezes about 2, 3 o'clock every afternoon off the bay. And so I feel like that helps keep this site a little bit cooler, which allows us to hang on to a little bit more acidity in the wines, giving them a little bit more freshness, holding on to more of the brighter red fruit notes, and bringing a little bit more elegance to the wines.
Would we be able to try some Petite Syrah by any chance?
Absolutely. When we were fermenting this, it was just so big and bold and super funky. I couldn't help but think of James Brown's Make It Funky.
James Brown Petite Syrah.
I had it planned on repeat when we do pump overs.
Wow. Ooh, that is a little funky. In a really nice way, a really fun way.
It seems like every year is a fantastic Petit Syrah year. You know, we'll ferment our best lot of Petit Syrah in concrete tank. That kind of allows the fermentation to stay a little bit cooler. So the first time I did it, I started to see these kind of like floral, violet and perfumey notes coming out of Petit Syrah. And it was something that I never really associated with Petit Syrah. For me, they were always more like the blueberry, blackberry, tobacco, smoked meats. So it just was mind-blowing for me. I mean, I'm excited about every vintage, but this year for sure.
Well, thank you so much for talking about the 2022 vintage and sharing some of these wines. They're clearly very special, and I can't wait to see how they develop more. And
It was an absolute pleasure.
hey,
Cheers.
cheers. Each vintage is unique, and 2022 has been no exception. This will truly be one of the standout vintages of Napa wines. It'll be really exciting to finally get to taste these wines when they're released in bottle in 2025. I'll see you then.